On with the second speaker for this morning. Our second speaker is Cara MOREY. Cara just completed her 5th year leading the Princeton women's hockey program since 2017. Since she was appointed, they won the first ECAC tournament title, an Ivy League championship, qualified for 2 NCAA quarterfinals, set the program wins record, and established itself in the national top 10 rankings. I really love the title of Cara's presentation, and I hope you do as well. The devil is in the detail, structuring your week for success. Please welcome Cara MOREY. Take it away, Cara.
Thank you. Up here. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be in Finland. I'm more excited to go watch the hockey games this afternoon. But the deal was, in order to get tickets, I had to give a presentation first, so here it goes. Admittedly, my topic today isn't as sexy or as exciting as some of the others, but it is critically important, and it's definitely crucial if you want to have success and longevity in this profession. So before we start, if you can, I'd love you to scan this QR code. We're going to do kind of a live poll to see where people are already at in their planning sessions. Because whenever I go to coaches' conferences or I'm sitting around talking with my peers and fellow coaches, we get the same kind of questions. And the questions revolve around, what does your weekly preparation look like? So if you're on that QR live poll, I'd like you to follow along and answer these questions. Do you use video to teach your players? And admittedly, I don't know how long this is going to take to plug your answers in, but how often do you show video? And this one always comes up. How much do you focus on yourself versus your opponent? How much do you focus on special teams and special situations? Do you use analytics? And do you give analytics to your players? So you should be able to follow along live, and we'll look up the results at the end if you want to keep kind of working through this app. But essentially, what I want to know is, do you have a plan? And in this room, I would assume that most people have a plan. But what does your plan look like? So today I'm going to share what we do to prepare in NCAA and specifically at Princeton, and hopefully you can pull a few things to apply to your own program. So this is our team in 2020. As was just mentioned, we won our first ever league championship in the history of the program. So our program's been around since 1975. We had never won the championship before. And we actually did this by beating the #1 team in the country for that game. So obviously this success didn't happen just over the weekend. It was actually 4 years in the making. I had taken over as the head coach with this goal in mind. So how did we get here? It's really about creating a comprehensive plan that revolves around teaching and training. And so I was fortunate enough to have studied master's degrees in exercise physiology and a master's of education in teaching. And so I draw on both of this as I create my plan for my players. We have a yearly plan, we'll have a monthly plan, we'll have a weekly plan, we'll have a daily plan. So for this presentation, I really want to look at a weekly plan. What does your week look like in order to have success on the weekends? So this is a typical day for us, or a typical week for us in college hockey, specifically in the ECAC and at Princeton. So we're pretty fortunate that our weeks are very structured. We play every Friday and every Saturday, so it gives us at least 4 days during the week to practice leading up to the games. We have a little bit of a disadvantage in our league. We play 2 different teams every weekend. So we'll play one team on a Friday, we'll play a different team on a Saturday. So as we're preparing and scouting, we have to prepare for 2 opponents every single weekend. Definitely a little bit easier and more streamlined if you're playing the same team back to back. So you could think about the differences as we go through the plan. But where do we even start? So before we even begin planning, we need to review and preview. So we do this in a few ways. I'm going to start by analyzing the biometric feedback from the weekend. We're looking at heart rate data, training loads. We want to see where our players are at physically. Then I'm going to use quick shots of analytics to assess where we're at, what we were good at, what we needed to improve on. Then I'm going to correct by watching our game film, seeing what areas we struggled with, seeing what areas we excelled in, and then finally watch scout film, like Todd just showed, watching the opponents and figuring out any adjustments we need to make in the week following. So, biometric feedback, and I'm not sure how many of you guys use any of this because we're all at different levels, but we use a lot of biometric feedback to start planning our week. So this biometric feedback really helps you decide how intense you need to make your weeks. There's a lot of wearable technologies out there. So with Team Canada on the national team, we would use Catapult, which is the most expensive and the most intricate. It will tell you not only your biometric data with your heart rate, it will tell you, using GPS technology, it will tell you speeds that they're skating, it will tell you distance traveled, it will tell you stride differential, really intricate but super expensive. Then in the States, we have Whoop or Oura rings that the players can wear the whole time. That'll even track their sleep habits so you can see their recovery numbers. For us, we use Polar, which I think is actually a sponsor here. So we use the Polar heart rate monitors, and they wear them for everything they do physically. And we're measuring their training loads and their recovery time that I'll go into in a minute. But it really allows you to design your week's practices with the proper intensities, and it also lets you look at the season to make sure that you're not overtraining or undertraining as you go. So here's an example of what we'd look at over the season. This is actually a season's worth of data. And again, what we're really concerned with, if you could do a whole hour on just the biometric feedback. But as hockey coaches in the NCAA, we don't have time to do all of it, so you need help with your strength and conditioning coaches. But what we're really looking at is training load. And what that is intensity over duration. So the more intense you are, the higher the number is going to be. The longer you're competing, the larger the number is going to be. And you can see here, it's a difference between the practices and the games. And what we want to try to get to is that our 4 practices during the week are mimicking the amount they're going to work for the 2 games on the weekend. That is the goal. We also want to look at this and see, were we peaking where we needed to peak? You see the big gap in those graphs. That's actually during Christmas break when we had nothing, so they didn't have any data. But we're just measuring this over the season to make sure with our strength and conditioning coaches and the way we're building our practices that we're peaking as playoffs come. We don't want to dip. So this is 1 week, and this is, again, a lot of data here, but what's important to me is we have it broken down for each player on the team, so we can see if that player is, performing at her peak. Some of the players that didn't get ice time, they know the numbers they have to hit, and if they haven't hit it, they need to go do their extra workout that weekend, so they're not losing their fitness. But what I'm concerned with as a coach, we'll break it up by position, so we have all the D at the top, forwards in the middle, goaltenders at the bottom. And I'm looking at the week. There you have Friday and Saturday. Those are their game numbers. So you can see, again, workload and recovery time. And so if you look at Friday's recovery time, 36 hours, that's not great because we only have about 15 hours before the next game. We'll play Fridays at 6, Saturdays at 3. And then you can see that their numbers went down to 123. So they weren't as able to produce the output, probably because they didn't get enough rest time. Nothing we can really do about that with the games. But if you look at the bottom ones, Monday is the most intense practice of the week. And we want that graph to be Monday and Tuesday high, start to taper Wednesday, dip down on Thursday as the lowest, so that they're ready Friday and Saturday to spike for those games. So this is some of the stuff we're looking at. Again, I'm going to look at how much recovery do they need after Saturday. It's 24 hours. That's good. We're going to give them Sunday off. We don't need to take an extra day off this week. So then I can start looking at the next thing. We know physically where we need to train them. They're in good shape. We're going to go hard on Monday, hard on Tuesday, and then start to taper. Then I'm going to get a quick snapshot with analytics. And when you're looking at analytics, they need to mean something to you. So for me, I want a quick snapshot of how we did. This is an example of one of our games. This is an interesting game to me because we actually won 11-3. But if you look at the analytics, it does not match the score. Okay, so for me, what's really important in my first snapshot, I want to know the scoring chances by situation, like how were we on the penalty kill, how were we on the power play, how were we 5-on-5. I want to look at odd man rushes because that was an issue we were having all season. So for me, we kept giving up a lot of odd man rushes. I wanted to see how we were doing in that area. And I'm going to look at puck battles a lot to see if we're winning. So if you look at this analytics, it does not tell the story of that 11-3 game. So my immediate feedback is this was a goaltending issue and a little bit of puck luck. And so I know that I'm going to start watching film to see, why that score was so discrepancy. So then I'm going to give some to my players, and I'm only going to give them stats that match the way I want them to play. Like the things I care about and the way I want them to play, those are the stats I'm going to give them. So we will give them a skill package because, the purpose of the game is to score goals. But what we're looking at here is like shot attempts, again, scoring chances, and this is just 5-on-5, so that all the kids that are playing special teams aren't in a separate category. So in 5-on-5 hockey, how many chances for versus the chances against were you on for? And then we have our team total. So this is each player. And you can see, even though it was 11-3, we only outchanced them by 3. So what really jumped out to me on this when I gave it to the players is our top line. They were +9 and +8 on chances. Our second line was -3 and -4. So now I know when I'm watching the film later, why did our second line struggle so badly? Why was our first line so successful? I can think about this later if we play them in playoffs, if I want a line match differently. This is the more important stats that we like to give them. This is the grit package. So this is the way we want them to play. And again, you pick stats that mean something to you, but for me, puck management, their turnovers and takeaways, really important. What are they doing with the puck? So their net score, we were a -8. Like, that's not good puck management that day, even though we won the game. I like to look at the puck battle percentage and the number of puck battles they engage in. So you might be 60% on your puck battles, but you went into the hard areas 4 times, whereas someone else might be 40%, but they engaged in, 27 puck battles. That tells me what kind of game they're playing. Are you willing to go to those hard areas of the ice, or do you just like to stay around the perimeter? And they get all this, right? So they're comparing themselves to their teammates. And then finally here with the little arrow, this is something unique to us. We call them effort plays. So we go in and tag every time there's one of those awesome plays that lead to winning but don't show up on the game sheet. So big back checks, maybe you beat an icing, big corner battles, a good net front battle for a win. That stuff's going to be marked down in effort plays. And I'm going to come back to that a little bit later because we do something special with those on game day. So once we've got some biometric feedback and I've got some analytics, it's time to start looking at the film. All right, so we'll start with ourselves, watch the games that we just had, figured out where we had success, where we really need to focus the next week. And then our assistant coaches will put together a great scout package. Again, we have 2 teams to scout for, looking for tendencies like Todd just spoke of, and deciding if we need to have any adjustments for the upcoming week in the way we're playing. And then we can start creating our plan. So we still even haven't started with what the plan's going to be. We need a plan for our video, we need a plan for our systems, and a plan to bring in our skills and conditioning. So this is an example of a weekly planner that we use. And it just, you can make yours however you want, but I'm making sure that we're touching on all the systems and all the concepts that we can. So I do it over 4 days. And I want the video to match what we're practicing, but we will look at this every 3 to 4 weeks to make sure there's no gaps in what we've been teaching. Because you find that, sometimes you wait till like January or February before you're working on 5-on-3s and 6-on-5s, or all of a sudden there's face-offs, and instead of putting out fires, you've planned way ahead and made sure that they're touching on these things each month. So we'll just check this box. We'll make sure our video aligns with our practice sessions and what we want to teach. And then we'll start planning our practices. So I think Todd discussed this a little bit too, but we know that everybody learns in 3 different ways: visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic learners. So we need to make sure that they see it, they hear it, and then they do it. So we'll start with seeing and a video session. So taking a Monday, we'll grab a Monday. We've already planned our 4 days, making sure we have the concepts we want to touch on. And for this presentation, I grabbed 2 games from a weekend and noticed that the other team broke the puck out quite easily. So our forecheck really wasn't great. But we will start with 10 to 15 minutes of video every single day. So they'll come to the rink from class. They're in class all day. They come to the rink, they'll get changed out of their street clothes, and we meet in the video room. And we are going to go over 10 to 15 minutes. And as Todd said, you can't have your video sessions too long. They'll lose interest. They're generally tired from a long day of school. But if you add up those 10 to 15 minutes every day, you're getting close to an hour of video every single week without having to pull them in extra to sit and watch an hour of video. So we'll also do small group videos, individual video throughout the week, but we start every day with 10 to 15 minutes. So this is just an example of what we might show on a Monday when we're talking about forecheck. So we pulled 9 clips in this video session, and this is about correcting for us. So I'm going to always come up with 3 concepts. This is forecheck. I want them to pay attention to F1. F1 was not physical, didn't have a good stick. Want to point to F3 and whether she should take away the wall or soft lock. And then I want to have the D pay attention to their gaps. Did they set their gaps early and have tight gaps? So starting with the first clip, you can see F1 here does not do a great job going in and pinning, kind of swoops by. And then even worse, when they make the adjustment, F2, one of the worst swoops I've seen. Luckily, we recover high and force a turnover, but that's an example of a poor F1. Here's another one where actually she's coming in through the middle. She cheats the D to D pass, no contact. They come out pretty easily. Lucky there's a decent gap. Okay, this one is a little bit better, F1 and F2. F3 is high, so she can take away the wall immediately because both F2 and F3 are high. And then on this switch, she notices our rule, if 1 and 2 are low, F3 has to soft lock, so she comes across and forces that turnover. Okay, here's another example where they're going in, no real contact, but F1 and F2 get caught low, so F3 knows she needs to soft lock. D could have a little bit better gap, get that dot line, and that cross ice pass shouldn't occur. Okay, in this one again, F2 and F1 get in low, below the dots. You can see a good stick here, and that's what we want to point out. Good stick placement, taking away the middle. D must be on a change. But because she does a good job with that soft lock, there's a quick turnover. Here we have F2 low ready, and that allows F3 to take away the wall, but I'm looking at the D gaps here. We could have a tighter gap. When they end up switching sides on this rotation, you're going to notice F1's pressuring, F2 jumps the D to D, and now because they're both low, F3 has to do a good job soft locking that, taking away the middle, forces the turnover. Okay, this one we want to start looking at our D gaps here to point out. So again, F2 can start recovering high, but because she's not high, F3 should not have come down the wall like that, but more importantly, our D gap's way too big. This is a really easy exit, really easy entry because of our D gaps. Another one where we're going to point out, again, the gaps of the D. This is in zone, so we're forcing turnovers here. We need to see our players in the picture. They're going to come in late. F3's holding that sweet spot in case we get a scoring chance, but our D's gaps need to be way tighter so that this exit isn't so easy for the other team. And then lastly, we're going to end with a decent clip where we come in with pressure. 2's taking the D to D. 3 decides to jump the wall because of where 2 is. We force a turnover, get a quick scoring chance, and that could have been a good opportunity for us. So that would be a typical video session because we're going to work on forecheck in practice, and I want them to see exactly what we're looking to do. After they see it, we're going to discuss practice, what we're going to do that day. So this is about teaching and discussing, and we're going to talk about what we want at practice. So we're going to talk about the system. I'll usually do more than one system a day, but for this one, we're just picking forecheck. So we're going to talk about teaching it the whole part whole method. So they've seen what we want in the whole. We're going to break it down into those 3 pieces for our drills. We're going to talk about the role of F1. We're going to work on good stick, pressure to contact, separating the player from the puck, and we're going to do a 2-cone forecheck drill. And that's exactly what we're looking for in that drill, okay? Then we're gonna talk about the soft lock versus taking away the wall. And F3, we're gonna talk about, again, these concepts and skills within it, having the stick to the middle to take away the center pass. We're gonna talk about toe caps up ice and closing by the red line. We're gonna do a drill called Invent 1v2, and that's gonna work on just that skill. And then we put it all together, again, with this Hitchcock forecheck, where we're talking about the Ds having good gaps, getting off the wall, holding the dot line, being difficult to play against. And then our 2 games that we're going to play, we're going to talk about the concepts we want to see within those games, which I'm not going to show you today. But we're going to show this practice plan to them. And this is also a question that comes up. Do you give them the practice in advance? There's a lot of controversy over this, really. A lot of coaches think it's like cheating if you give them the practice. They're afraid they might manage their energy or intensity levels throughout the practice. We give it to them early because for our players, they want to know what they should be doing. They want to know the expectations. And the more prepared they are for practice, the more intentional they are and the better the practice becomes. So we'll give them this, we'll walk through it, we'll draw it on the whiteboard again, and then they'll go get their gear on and get ready to practice. So now it's time for doing. I'm going to show you those drills we talked about, just because everybody likes to get new drills. So this is the 2-cone forecheck. And I love this coach vision draw. We're going to put all our drills on this, but one end has a 1-on-1, the other one has a 2-on-1. But basically it's working on F1, steering, pinning, and causing a turnover. And you can see it in this like 3D model now, where the coach dumps the puck on net, goalie sets it. This one's the 1-on-1. The only rule is the D cannot get the back of the net. She has to use deception and try to come up the strong side while F1 is working on pressure to contact, separating her from the puck, and then it's a 1-on-1 back to the net. This one shows the 2-on-1. The forwards again go around the top cone. The D's going around the bottom cone. Goalie sets the puck. She can't get the back of the net. We have a pin, second quick, 2-on-1 back to the net. We build this all the way up to a 3-on-2. When it's a 3-on-2, we allow them to go behind the net. So that's working on the skill of F1, pressure to contact. That's the part of the forecheck we needed to isolate. Now this drill, Invent 1v2, is working on soft locking. So we're going to start here, forwards, both ends at the same time. Forward passes up, point shot through traffic, then she comes under the cone, picks up a puck, and she's trying to score on the far net. At the same time, F3's coming across, using those skills we talked about, wedging off with the D and forcing a turnover by the red line. So you can see it again, drag and shot through a net front battle, working on fronting for our D down low. Forward picks up a new puck, and now we're working on this wedge or this soft lock, trying to end it by the red line. Okay, and then we can build on this when we want to work on transition. We'll talk about what happens on that turnover, how we're going to transition and go back down the other way. And then this is when we put it together, 5-on-5 drill, put all the parts of that forecheck together that we've been working on. Stole this from Hitchcock, actually, when he came to Princeton. But 2 pucks dumped into each end. Each team's going to break out the puck. We got some corner reverses on these breakouts, and then they're going to give it to their respective coach. One designated coach is going to dump it in either end, and they don't know which end's going to be dumped in. So obviously, if it goes in your end, you're breaking it out. The other team is forechecking. It's live 5-on-5. Again, we're looking at the concepts and the skills. We talked about the habits of F1 getting in, making contact, F2 pressuring low, F3 deciding, do I take away the wall, do I soft lock, and D's setting good gaps early. And then you can just play this out as long as you want. It'll go back and forth. So those are 3 of the main drills that we want to focus on, that practice that had to do with what we talked about. And then we need to close the feedback loop. So this is something I started doing this year, hadn't done in the past, and I found it really important, and that is videotaping practice. And there's two main reasons why I videotape practice now. It really helps with your fourth line players and your scratches. Like, we have meetings all the time and they want to know why they're not playing, what do they have to do to get in the lineup. But every time you have video, it's game video and they're never in it. So if you want to teach those fourth line players, one, have them improve so they can make the lineup. Two, maybe justify why they're not in the lineup. It helps if you have video of them. The other reason is you just get way more reps to watch to find out where the gaps in learning are. So you know as coaches that these systems rarely happen perfectly in a game. You might find in 2 games, you might find 3 to 4 clips of a perfectly executed system that you're working on. But when you are doing it in practice, you have 8 to 10 to 12 reps right in front of you that you can say, oh, now I see why they're making the mistake. Now I get it, because you have way more reps to assess. So I really recommend videotaping your practices, looking at it after and finding out where are they still confused on this system. So that would be like a Monday and Tuesday going through that. And then we're going to move into scout team. Like, now we have to focus on the other opponent. And people do it differently. I know that I talk to a lot of NCAA coaches. When they have one opponent, they might show their scout film as early as Monday or Tuesday so that they can work on those adjustments all week long. But because we have 2 opponents, we try to spend the beginning focusing on us, and then we're going to move in to what the other teams are doing. So the question always becomes, how much do you work on yourself? How much do you work on the other team? For me, it matters on what time of the year it is. Is it early in your season? Are you getting near playoffs? That's going to adjust how much you want to focus on the other team versus you. Ours varies throughout the week. So like I said, Mondays is all about us correcting and improving or building on what we did last weekend. Tuesdays is really focused on us, but sometimes we'll do power play on Tuesdays, and that way we might want to show the other team's penalty kill so they can have an idea of the pressure they're going to face. Wednesday and Thursdays when we're bringing in scout team, we've done it 2 different ways. We've done it where one team we show on Wednesday, their whole scout package, one team we show on Thursday. We've also done it, what I actually prefer is if we're working on breakouts, we'll show both teams forechecks so they have an idea of the pressure they're going to face when they're doing the breakout. So it really can vary, it's up to you. Friday, we might hit them with a couple keynotes on the other team, but it's really focused on our video, which I'll show you at the end. And then Saturday, because it's 2 different teams, we do have to remind them, but morning session before that game, what they're gonna face on the second opponent. Overall, you can see we do focus on ourselves a little, I'd say 70-30. I don't know the exact math here. And Todd did a phenomenal presentation on Scout Video. This is what the sheets we hand out. Again, it's that balance between giving them too much information, not enough information. This is 2 pages. We do give the lineup. We talk about the players. Like Todd said, most of the girls know who they're playing against. But for us, the key things are forecheck pressure, so we can break the puck out well. Our D need to know what kind of pressure they're going to be under. Are they going to be pinching on the walls? We definitely need to scout and scheme for their power plays. And then any face-offs that they might run, we need to know how to handle those. Outside of those 3 things, if a team, runs a man-on-man D zone versus a zone, we might want to know that. Or if they run a trap in the neutral zone, we might look at that. But if everything else is standard, we'll just avoid some of it so that they can focus on themselves. So they'll have this with their stat sheets. This is all going in their binders for those week's games. And then we do give them quizzes. Like, we need to know if they're retaining the information. We also, again, want to assess gaps in learning. So early in the season, we'll give these out once a week. This one is just on face-offs, but sometimes we'll quiz on our own systems. Sometimes we'll quiz them on the opponent's systems. Not only does it tell you where they're not understanding the information, it also lets you know who's ready to go. If I'm quizzing them on the other team's power play and they don't know it, I'm not putting them on the penalty kill that weekend. Another way to really assess this and get them to understand it is to have them teach it. So in those whiteboard sessions, we'll often call on players and have them come up and teach. Here's their lineup on this face-off. What are they running? How do we line up? How are we adjusting? How are we going to defend this? So having the players teach each other is often more valuable. And again, as you're listening as a coach, you can figure out where the gaps in learning are. And Then it comes to that question of special teams. This one comes up quite a bit. How often do you work on special teams versus 5-on-5 hockey? So in 2019, the year before that picture, we won the Ivy League championship, and our power play was #1 in the country. And people always ask, how often do you work on your power play? This year, our penalty kill was like 40th in the country out of 42nd. So I'm telling you, we did not work on it enough. And I don't think we scouted well enough on that. So we try to look at it mathematically, all right? Because what else can we really do outside of our gut feeling? But this season in our league, it was an average of 13 minutes, or 22% of the game was spent on special teams across the league for everybody. So that instinct is, well, if you're 22% of the game is special teams, 22% of your practices should be special teams. But of course, being at Princeton with really smart students, we had to look at, well, what's the impact on these 22%? So we were looking at how many goals are scored? How important is this? How much weight does special teams hold? So this year for us, again, we were not good on the penalty kill this year, but we looked at our situation specifically, so I would recommend taking your data and look at it. This year, 30% of the goals scored in our entire season were on a special teams situation. So knowing that 22% of the game were on special teams, 30% of the goals were scored on special teams, we're going anywhere between 22 to 30% of our practice time needs to be focused on that. So we just did some simple math. We practice about 80 minutes a day, 4 days a week. So if you take 25 to 30% of that, for us, either 20 minutes of practice, 1 full practice, or for us, we are about 45 minutes twice a week. So that's how we kind of went on that. So all that brings us down to game day. And how do you prepare on game day? What does game day look like? And there's a lot of different factors. Pre-game skate has come up recently with our players. We generally would pre-game skate 30 full minutes, full gear, games and drills. They're asking about, what if we just went in sweats? Can we make it optional? So for our 6 p.m. games on the road, we'll probably do our pregame skates as is. When we're at home, they are out busy, walking around campus, doing all kinds of things. Pregame skate will be optional, but they have to be doing something, right? They have to be doing some sort of activation. And then for us, for video, if we go back and remember that slide of effort plays, what we do is we take all those effort plays and we put them into one video. And that's what they're going to see before the game, because that's the way we want them to play. We want them to see it, feel it, know what they're doing. And kind of the winner of the effort play video gets to pick the music to next week's video. So there's kind of a reward for playing like really gritty hockey. So this is an example of what we'll show on Friday before we go to the ice.
Turnover at the blue line, pushed along into the middle, backdoor beat, McLean.
Okay, I think you get it. And there was too many goalie clips in that one, which meant that we were giving up quite a few scoring chances. So we'll show that before the game so that in their head, they're ready to go playing the way we want them to play. Sometimes we will put a few highlight goals on there because scoring does matter. But finally, this is something I think people forget to build into their weekly plan, and that is building connections. So as they say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So we can do all the X's and O's we want, all the planning we want, but if you're not consistently connecting with your players, they're not going to play for you. So we build this in two ways. The coin jar there is a story we talk about where everybody has an emotional coin jar, and you have to put coins in that coin jar every week. So anytime I connect with a player and I say, how was your exam today? You know, how'd your brother do in his hockey game last week? How are your parents doing? Anytime I talk to them about something other than hockey, I'm depositing in their coin jar. They know I care about them. Every time I ask them to play that kind of hockey, block shots, you know, battle in front of the net, I'm taking coins out of their jar because it's hard. And you cannot ask them to do these things if you have a deficit. So what I do to make sure that every week I'm planning in that connection is we do a jersey number meetings. So basically what that means, if you wear number 12, on the 12th of every month, you're coming in to meet with me. 15 minutes, making sure we talk about anything that's not hockey related, and then they go. And then I know that each week I'm making sure that I'm planning in, touching in, and connecting with each of my players. So again, this is kind of a typical week for us. There's a lot that goes into it. And then I'm going to see if we can pull up these survey results. I'll see if the internet works and pulls them up and see kind of how we did here. All right, so daily 24% video, we do that quite a bit more often. Monthly 4%. It looks like most people are showing it once a week or weekly. How much do you focus on yourself? So a lot are focusing on themselves versus their opponents. This is pretty cool stuff. Oh, this one's really all over the place. This is the question we always get. Special teams is always the hardest one. But you can see everybody's kind of all over the place with how much they practice special teams. Some people are over 50%. So hopefully looking at the math there and understanding what could be the right balance. Most people, that's great, using analytics and giving them to their players. So really good here. I'm going to go back to that slide if I can. Go back to the PowerPoint. I'm just going to leave you with, let's see if I can get out of this. This last slide, I got this from my mentor, Mel Davidson, who some of you in this room might know. She was big in Hockey Canada. And she would say to me, Cara, you need to have a rigid plan, but you don't have to follow it rigidly. So that is the art of coaching, having a plan, knowing what you're going to do, but being able to feel, see, and make adjustments as need be. So thank you for having me. Hopefully you got a few nuggets you can take to your programs. And if you have any questions, ask someone else.
Thank you, Cara. Well, thanks, Cara, for a fantastic presentation. So many insights. I've taken like 3 pages of notes that I'm taking back. Please, any questions for Cara? Thank you. We got some microphones in the room there for you. That's great. If you could let us know your name and your country before the question, that'd be great.
Okay. I'm Jean Lemoine from Quebec, Canada. Hi, Cara. Thank you for your presentation. I'm from educational background, so really interesting to hear you about a lot of things that you do that we do in teaching, and it's really nice. I saw that a lot of early week stuff that you are doing concern analytics and biometric measures. Just for, you use many technologies, do you have time to, or reflection to take a look at how these characteristics could be associated between themselves? And did you find it relevant to do it, or did you do it? Because I think that might be interesting to see those associations, and I think they can also influence the way of preparing the team or seeing how do they perform when they are fatigued, for example?
Yeah, we actually give them the login so they can also go check because they're students and they're really interested in it. And they're really looking at their rest and recovery. And for us, the big thing there is we preach sleep, and that like sleep is a weapon, rest is a weapon. So for them, it's understanding that when they're looking at their biometrics, if they've had a bad game, connecting like how much sleep were you getting? Was your heart rate getting into this zone too frequently? So we don't necessarily match the analytic package with the heart rate that I showed, but we will talk about it on other levels of also perceived exertion versus where their heart rates were. But one really important thing I actually forgot to talk about is we will actually tag each drill according to the intensity. So we'll take their heart rate data during a drill that we can see live, and we'll divide it by position and goaltenders, and we'll assign it an intensity between 1 to 5. And then we can use that in our database so that we know Mondays we're looking for drills that are anywhere from a 3.5 to a 5, because that's an intense day. And on Thursdays, we're looking at drills that are more in the 1 to 3 range, so that it's a lower intense practice. So that one's become really valuable, especially because with our goaltenders, like I was never a goalie, and I always think that like, what are they doing? It looks like they're doing nothing. And so one time we did like all small area games on a Thursday, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and it turned out our goalies got smoked. And I wouldn't, like, you don't want to accidentally bag your goalies the day before a game. So using the heart rate data to plan your practices was become really helpful for us.
Thank you. Any other questions? One down there. Ooh. I thought you were going to race to get in the microphone, yeah.
Cara, this was great. So you've been, I think, at Princeton 5 years now?
Well, 12, but I think 5 as head coach.
So with the program or the weekly schedule that you have now, can you give any examples, say 5 years ago when you started, any sort of changes you've made to it, and what might have influenced those changes to how you run your week? Yeah,
honestly, the last couple years we scaled it down, and then we didn't do as well, so we're bringing it back up. But like, it's always that hard balance when you're dealing with student athletes of like, how much is too much video? Are they falling asleep? Like, how much is too much preparation? How much is like too scripted and they just need to learn how to play? And so you really have to know your athletes. So we used to be really rigid. We got a lot of talented kids come in. We gave them a lot more leeway where we probably scouted less, schemed a little less, and honestly, we didn't perform as well. So I do think in the end with our student athletes, it's honestly the more they know, the better they feel. And then you have to throw in those weird things in practice to make them adjust. But when I first went to Princeton as an assistant, there was no plan. It would just, we'd show up and say, what do we want to work on today? And then the next day we'd say, what do we want to work on today? And we could make a practice plan, but there was no thought out, like, what does the month end up looking like? Are we practicing the same thing every day? Are we just doing the drills we like to do? There was no biometrics to know where their fitness was at. It was really just, we showed up and we said, you know, what do we feel we should work on? And then we would practice plan and do the next day. And there really was no concise video that went with it. So there was no seeing. And a lot of times the players' feedback was like, I'm just not sure what you want me to do. I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. So it was really just to get that I'm just not sure out of their vocabulary.
Thank you. Maybe time for one more question if there's any questions in the room. Okay. If not, then what we're going to do, we're going to have another short break, again, to top of your coffee. Please feel free to, you agree with me, so far we've had a great morning, so please feel free to continue to ask questions of Todd or Cara during the break. But for now, just please thank Cara for a fantastic presentation. Thank you, Cara. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Cara, that was brilliant. Well done. I don't know what you were worried about. It was fantastic.
yourself at home.